Colin is 100% a product person, so I promise there will be very, very few slides. Most of this is going to be a live demo of the product, so we hope you enjoy. Before we get started, I do want to let folks know that we are recording, so you're going to be able to access this later on our LinkedIn page right here at the same event. So if you need to jump or if you want to come back to it, all of it's still going to be accessible for you after the event. Additionally, we're going to be monitoring the comments and the questions below in the event chat. So feel free, add your questions in there. We'll take a look throughout the event and shoot those over to Colin. Let us know if you need anything. And I think we are ready to get started. So over to you, Colin.
Cool. So I'm going to jump through a couple slides on our philosophy, what we're trying to do, and then we'll spend some time in the product. So I guess quick background on the company. We're about 3 years old. We were founded in 2022, but our team has been in the space for a very long time. I spent 8 years at Looker prior. I was one of the first customers before that. And a lot of our team has spent a lot of the past decade or two in some layer of the BI stack. So our CTO, Chris, came from Stitch, worked on DBT for a little bit inside Stitch. We've raised quite a bit of funding, so about $100 million from a variety of investors. Our newest pair in Iconic and Snowflake Ventures, alongside Theory. And we've grown very quickly, especially over the last 18 months. So we did spend a bunch of time building the product, making sure that we had enough good stuff to really convince people that there was a better way. And over the last 18 months, we've added customers at a really quick clip, kind of just across all industries, verticals, all the way up to public companies. And the goal, if it's not obvious from the name, is really to enable everything. So we want everyone to be able to use data in a whole variety of different ways. So rather than compromising or bouncing across different tools, we want to make sure that everyone can do everything in one place. And when they do those things, they can contribute them back to everyone else. So we're going to cover a lot of this in the demo, but you'll see that we can do a bunch of stuff with AI and natural language. We've got quite deep coverage around spreadsheets and Excel. So our functional language for building new fields and things like that is based on Excel, but we've also put an entire spreadsheet in the product. You've got all the classic sort of point and click pivot table BI that you're used to. And then you can always touch the SQL. We really want to make sure that power users can unlock the entire UI and always go a level deeper. And we'll kind of show you that as well. The way it works, final slide, is every analysis starts inside a workbook. And inside those workbooks, you can do all the different types of analysis I was just talking about: point and click, Excel, SQL, AI. And you do that in the isolation of your workbook. So you can move really quickly. You don't really have to worry as much about the impact on other users. You can sort of be creative, build the things you need, have the tool get out of the way. When you do those, they can stay in the workbook forever. So the idea is that you don't need to wait on the data team to build net new logic, to build the dashboard that you need. There's a permissions layer that can control all of this. So it doesn't have to be that way, but you can give users the freedom to do things like that. When users build things that are valuable to everyone else, and we're going to show you examples of all of this, you can pick up those metrics and actually promote them to a shared data model. And what that means is that we can take this isolated business logic that was done on a one-off basis inside a workbook, and we can essentially put it in everyone's workbook. And it means that now the data team can standardize those things. Now it has centralized ownership, and now it's going to be consistent across everyone. And that is sort of the first level of sort of logical construction. Furthermore, it is very reasonable to assume that you will build metrics and create business logic that even supersedes Omni. We know that we will not be everything for everyone always. And the next layer is that you can actually promote that business logic out of Omni into the data warehouse. So think, I'm an analysis, I'm a marketer, I classify my sources, I put that on a dashboard, I share that out with everyone. Great, I've done my job. Data team can pick that up. They can say, everyone needs this classification, it's really important. Put it in the data model. We can then take that logic and say, my data science team needs it outside in a notebook, promote it down to the warehouse, and just put it physically on the table in the warehouse. And so the idea is that you can be a little bit more fluid in where your business logic lives. You're going to do some transformation in the warehouse to remove deleted records from your Salesforce ETL. You're also going to do analysis in the workbook that is query specific, that might be one-off. But rather than the logic being stuck there forever, it can float up and down the stack, and you've got that flexibility. That is sort of the vision that we have tried to build with Omni, and I will show you what it looks like. So I'm going to jump into a playground environment, and we're going to start in the front end and sort of work our way backwards into the querying behavior. So we'll start with sort of some of the vanilla basics, and we'll drop into sort of data modeling, building from scratch. So obviously, at the core of the product, there are dashboards. You can present out data. A lot of nice things come from the structure that we have, which is, for the most part, as users are using the application, we're actually going to write SQL down to a data warehouse, compile that SQL, and big back results from the warehouse. So we don't need to wait to load data into Omni. We're sort of connected to data that is as live as your warehouse. It also means there's a bunch of nice features, like anytime we see an aggregate, we can go drill down and understand the rows underneath it. So this user had $904 of sales. We can actually go look at those sales. We can look at those records. We can drill in further. You can orchestrate very deep linking throughout the system. So here, anytime we see a user ID, we can link out to a full dashboard about that user. And so you can deep link inside our app. So now I can get a deeper dive on this user. You can also deep link externally. So this is an e-commerce store. If I want to go drill into Allegra K, this is a Google search. More typically, that's something like Salesforce. The other kind of theme that you're going to see, and I mentioned this, is we always let the power user poke through. So these are all point and click, sort of vanilla visualization. And we need to make sure the basics are really easy and fast and simple. There's also a long tail of visualization that you're going to want to be able to build. And we're using an open source library called Vega Lite underneath. And anytime we build a visualization, we'll also hand you that visualization and let you customize it. And it means that there's sort of always a long tail of viz that you can build that goes beyond what we support in the UI. It means that we can get super, super custom visually for anything that we need to do. So if you need to scatter plot, flags or emojis or something like that, you can get really custom when you need to. And that poke through, we actually do in a whole bunch of different layers of the app. So this is just a library of KPI tiles, all pretty vanilla, but this is kind of the bread and butter of analytics, is a lot of single numbers and spark lines and things like that. If I look underneath one of these, you're going to see that we have a library of these little widgets that are super quick to build. You can see how easy it is to add these things. The config for them is all in the front end. But sometimes you want to get more custom. And in those worlds, we will actually hand you HTML, CSS, and Markdown, and you can go customize these things completely. And so the idea here is that when you need something to look exactly a specific way, I hope you're not making invoices in Markdown, but you could. But more realistically, banners, tiles, cards, you can get very, very custom in the UI. And the idea is that you can get all the way to doing things like actually embedding iframes of other applications in the product. So you never are going to get stuck building the tightest visuals that you can imagine. And just a few examples of these that we have built. I'll just show you a handful. But just to kind of see how far that you can take these, you can get completely custom with the visualization. Don't know what happened here. But you can get really, really custom visually. So, if you need a dashboard to look just this way, I think we copied sort of a New York Times article for this. You can get really custom. And that's a lot of the power here is we want the simple things to be simple, and we want depth to be available. So here's another example with, a whole bunch of different, whatever these are. So whole point is that you've got a lot of extensibility in the front end. There's one last version of extensibility that I think is worth highlighting. And that is sometimes that you need our application to live in other applications. So the canonical example is, a SaaS company that needs to report out to their customers. We have a very deep theming library as well. So you can also pick up all of the CSS on our dashboard and completely customize it for your use case. So shadows, borders, colors, fonts, kind of anything that you can imagine there. And if you're feeling incredibly spicy, you can see a little application version that we built last year. This is actually our Windows 98 skin. But you can get very, very custom with the application. And so if you're looking for a more nostalgic feel, this is always available as well. So the idea is, again, like, you can always customize the app as far as you need to from a visual perspective. So we want the front end to be, super curated. We don't want you to have to compromise. Cool. So let's go take a look underneath, because that's actually where, most of our investment has been as a company. So I'm going to go look at a fresh data set. And again, sort of, I mentioned this earlier, there's a lot of different ways to explore data. We can pick up curated topics. So you can think about these as data sets that the data team has manicured to make self-service very simple for end users. So I could go look at users. This in this category is just the users table. I could go look at transactions. This is a curated view of transactions, their associated users, their associated products. Again, sometimes you do want to really curate data sets out for your end users. At the same time, there's a bunch of other ways that we can do things. We can ask questions with AI. We'll come back to that. You can start writing raw SQL. We'll do that in a moment. And you can also just drop into the entirety of the data warehouse. This is a relatively small warehouse, but you can actually explore things across all the schemas that you have available, all the tables that you have available. You can do self-service off of data that the data team has never touched. And so it means that you can move very, very quickly, even with brand new data sets. You don't need to put a model in front of it or anything like that. And then finally, you can actually bring data into the app itself. So this is some recently released product around CSV uploads. And we can take a look at sort of how simple it is to even bring new data in. So I'm going to drag in a data set from NBA salaries, I believe, that I just grabbed off of Kaggle this morning. And you can see that we're going to grab a bunch of data, infer columns. You can configure a little bit, but I can actually save this. And we'll call this, NBA player data. If I want to, I could federate this with other data sets. I could literally go sit it in the warehouse next to everything else. A lot of different workflow that we can put around it that is either extremely ad hoc or, you can deeply integrate it. But let's upload this data set. And you'll see that now it's in the environment. The really nice aspect here is I can also touch and feel this. So I don't know where some of these players went to college, but if I wanted to say, for example, international, or sort of do things like that, you can actually touch and feel the data set, save it. It will literally just flow through to the analysis. So incredibly easy to touch and feel these results. The nice thing is that we can actually now start working with this like any other data set. So I'll grab our player data and we'll start taking a look at some of the sort of querying functionality. So as I mentioned, as we click on things, we are going to write SQL. And so behind the scenes, you're always going to have SQL. That is sort of what we are doing to extract data from these data sets. So I can look at the distribution of numbers. I believe this is like the 2017 season. And you can sort of see the popularity of different numbers by team and things like that. Where it gets very interesting is we can start using a bunch of the building blocks in the app to start building net new logical constructs. And I'll show you a quick kind of isolated example of this. I noticed that we had height data and we can go, look at these players by height. You'll notice encoded as, feet, inches. And it's not sorting terribly well because it's a string. And unfortunately, that's kind of obnoxious. So what we're going to do is we're going to take advantage of that Excel calculation layer on top and start building business logic here. And if I wanted to, I could go start writing these functions by hand, like equals left of this comma 1. And I've got my Excel functions, and that's sort of the height and feet. And I could go do it myself. The nice thing is that the internet is very, very good at Excel. And it means that we can actually take advantage of LLMs to sort of intelligently write these functions for us. So I could say, take this height field and turn it into height in inches. And it's not always perfect. It might break. It didn't do a very good job here because it thinks the data set is structured a given way. And the nice thing here, though, is LLMs are pretty smart. So I could say, take this height field and let's describe how it looks. It's going to be feet dash inches. And we will see if it does a better job now. And you can see that it did this. And I can't immediately parse what it's doing here. But I think it actually managed to extract the inches of height here. And we have now a field that is an int that we can start with. So I'll call this height in inches. And just so you understand how this works, you can almost think about, the original query is something that we ran in SQL, and then we're building calculations on top of it, just in Excel in the browser. But the nice thing is that this can actually turn into structure. And I'll show you sort of an isolated example here. I can promote this to the workbook, and I can effectively make this a column on the data set. So I'm going to promote this, and you'll see that now I have height in inches, and I no longer need to have the sort of regular height in the workbook. I can actually just start working with this like another column. And we'll do another example in sort of a more vanilla e-commerce data set. You can see how quickly it is to sort of mix and match between these different components. Like I probably could have parsed this in SQL and figured it out. But as you sort of piece together these building blocks, you got a lot of power. And you can also just do things like quick aggregation. So if I wanted to see, for example, let's go look at the average salary by height. And you can see that for whatever reason, our shortest player, there's only one. It's getting paid about $7 million. And you've got things like formatting controls here. So if I want to make that, no decimals, we can go do that. We can also quickly make a list of all the players here. And so if I wanted to see who that was, it's Isaiah Thomas, but you can also see the three that are 5'11". You can see how fluid it is to move through the data set. And again, like all of the sort of natural sort of building blocks come for free here. So if I wanted to look at all of these players, let's put back normal height here. So if I wanted to go look at all players that are 6'10" and drill in, I can actually go, explore this data set one level deeper. So really fluid to move through these data sets. Let's show a more composed example on top of the e-commerce data set as well. So the nice thing is that we've got a whole bunch of these tools that are available to sort of get into the data set and move through it very fluidly. So the example I love to show off is, let's grab a weekly data set. We can chart this quickly. We've got nice time series. You can do little things to add, composability on top of the data set. So if I want to make this more interactive, we can add a time frame selector. We can even add a metric selector. And again, the whole idea here is just make it really, really simple to make the data set more interactive for your users. So it's count minors. I don't know what this no field is. Let's get rid of that. And you can see that now, if I pop back to my chart, I can move between different date cranes and different fields. And it's really kind of that trivial to set these sorts of things up. Very similarly, another type of analysis that is very common that we've built very native support for is period over period. So the sort of canonical example is that I want to, look at how I'm pacing. So let's look at beginning of this month to today. And we'll add some helpers that tell you sort of what we're doing. And we can very quickly compare that to offsetting periods. But the nice thing is that we can also start layering in some of those other concepts that you saw. So let's just compare it to year over year real quick. We can actually start building metrics on this, like growth. So let's flatten this pivot. And this is just going to turn it into essentially a pair of columns for, user count this year and user count previous year. And we can do things like, absolute growth. And again, just pure Excel. So this minus this. And let's insert a column to the right. And we can say, percent growth. And again, really easy to just touch and feel the result set and build analytics quickly. So the whole idea is that you can move through this fluidly and sort of do what you want. The other really nice example here, again, of sort of bringing these building blocks together is you can get sort of creative now with the types of functions that you have access to. So a pretty cool example here. Let's filter this down. Excuse me, let's filter it down for the US. So we'll go country is US. And we can do these sort of interesting functions that maybe you wouldn't even typically think about in a BI environment. Like a great example is create a giant ifs statement with the population of each state. And again, I'm not even sure if this is going to work. We will find out. But what is nice is that these sort of really simple building blocks actually can do this. I'm not going to validate these results, but you can see how quickly it is that we can actually rebase. You can see that the district didn't get caught. The nice thing is that we can actually just touch and feel this. So if I want to add in, A33 equals District of Columbia, then, DC population, let's say 678K. And it didn't work, or did it work? What just happened? Sort, let's see if it worked. It didn't. I don't know why. The theory is that this should just go, but for some reason it's not. So anyway, live demo. But theoretically, I could actually touch and feel and sort of edit these results. Tam, I see you
Uh,
popping in.
yes, we have a couple questions, so I
Yeah.
figured I would pop those in right now. Okay, so one question came in asking about visualizations.
Yep.
Does Omni support non-public facing visualization libraries?
I don't quite know what that means. Right now, it's just Vega. So we're using Vega underneath the hood. Um, I would note that we've got that markdown layer, which means that we can go embed other things. So we can bring other data sets into the product as well. But right now, the only library that we are going to give you access to is Vega.
Oh, awesome, thank you. And
There's a
then one other
follow-up.
question.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. One other question. This is from a marketer talking about incremental or like revenue attribution measurement. They
Yep.
wanted to know if they wanted to overlay a Markov or Shapley models on the already existing data in Omni. Is that something that would be possible?
That is a great question because I don't really know what that means. You probably could layer in some data science on top of the data set. So like I think a great example of this that I could actually pop up in a different environment is that um, we can sort of do anything that's available in the warehouse itself. So I'll show you a quick example here, um, which is I believe that we've done a little bit of work on Snowflake Cortex. Um, and so, in so much as you want to essentially explore or refine data sets, this is actually an example where we built a really small data model for each state to look up the state's most famous person. And what's quite nice here is that you can actually just sort of dynamically create these functions and make them available to users. This is probably how we would do heavier weight forecasting. We don't have just like a giant embedded sort of data science library in here. But in so much as you can enrich the data using some of these functions, we could actually take advantage of them and display them.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. So a couple other kind of cute extension points here. Obviously, I can pick up these functions and start working with them. So I can look at percent of state and things like that. And let's actually turn this into a percentage and sort. And you've got things like state penetration or whatever. But you've got these really natural building blocks. Again, I can promote this to the workbook and work with it the same way as anything else. And you can actually kind of keep extending this. So if I remove some of these fields for a second, let's remove these. The other nice sort of aspect here is it works just like Excel. So if I need to go annotate these and say like invest more, um, invest less, you can actually start hand annotating these results. You can chart with them. So we will literally just absorb them immediately into the app and you can chart with them and share them. And you can even promote these into the workbook. And, I didn't name it very well there, but we've got these really logical constructs underneath where it's really just now a case statement at state about the amount of investment that you want to apply. So if you want to hand annotate results and things like that, you've got a lot of flexibility there. Now, pushing further down the spreadsheet idea, there are a lot of other interesting extension points here, and I'll show you kind of what I mean by that. So one of the very meaningful changes that we saw in our customer base was that people were trying to do things with tables that are frankly hard to do in BI tools. For anyone that's ever worked in finance, you're often structuring data tables in ways that the database is not very good at building. And so to satisfy a lot of those use cases, we have actually put an entire spreadsheet in the product. And I'll show you what this looks like behind the scenes. But immediately you can see that the structure and the layout of the table is very, very different. And again, going back to sort of the Omni, like we want to be able to enable every single type of analysis that someone is trying to do. And so, this is a vanilla BI table. This is what tables look like out of BI tools. They're highly structured. They're somewhat rigid. The nice thing is that we can actually pick up this data table and we can move it into a spreadsheet environment. And inside that spreadsheet environment, we can work with it much more flexibly. So you can see that I even built a little calc over here, but what's happening? Okay, this number is doing dynamic multiplication. So I was demoing something before. But you can see that you can actually just work with this data like any other data set. So you can create sums over it. You can actually lay out things. You can build calculations that are offset over it. And the point here is that you can build presentational data tables that actually start to diverge from, the more rigid BI experience. So a really nice example that was built recently, we've got a set of very structured tiles up here. This is one of those markdown objects that we looked at earlier. This is, a finance data table. You can see we've got like some mini spark lines here. We've got the text laid out. We've got some sort of intermediate aggregates and things like that, but we can get incredibly custom with these result sets to make sure that we can present data the way that it needs to be presented, not the way that the BI tool sort of restricted the user. And so kind of other cute versions of this. This is a nice little sort of simulation dashboard where you can punch in things like changes and it will actually apply down to the sheet. And frankly, like spreadsheets can go very, very far from a styling point of view. So this is a sort of referential example. No one's actually doing this, but you could even build things that are like documents, but that are wired up to the data warehouse. So here, when you'll notice that when we change the user, we can actually change the invoice, and you can create a lot more sort of applicationized structure on top of these data sets. So the idea is that you've got a lot of balance. The final version of that I would love to show. Tam, is there another question?
Yes, I've got a couple other things. So
Okay.
one, shout out to Richard, who was one of the engineers working on calcs. Richard did let us know the reason that one wasn't working was he said there were quotes around A33. And so that is what happened there. Thank you so much, Richard. And then we also received another question about visualizations. So this person is asking what you would highlight as the best standout feature we have over competitors in terms of our visualization capabilities.
That's a good question. Because I mean, I think if I'm being perfectly honest, like there are companies like Tableau that have built around visualization that are just like extraordinary visually. So in terms of bells and whistles, they're probably going to have more in the front end of the app. I really think that our strength around visualization is this ability to actually touch and feel the data in the data table. So certainly the spreadsheet visualizations are relatively unique in the BI landscape, and the ability to sort of touch and feel these specs. But really, a lot of it is around the extensibility on sort of the markdown side and the kinds of stuff that you saw here. I think if you were pure play buying a BI tool based on visualization capability, we're probably not the right choice for you. But I think if you're looking at the composition of all the stuff underneath it and how you're getting data into the visualization, I think that's where we're the best in the whole world. So you've got to decide what's right for you. But I don't think we're going to compete on viz features per se. I'm trying to think of sort of other cute extension points. I'm really just clicking around at this point. This is a dashboard that's not even attached to data. So just to sort of put it out there, you can actually just pick up anything and embed it into these iframes. If you need to do, a Bitcoin ticker, you can go do things like that. But a lot of the sort of core vision here is extensibility. The sort of last thing that I would probably highlight here, the entire app is embeddable. And so what that means is that we can actually pick up all of the complexity of sort of Omni's application. We can put it into a portal and we can authenticate users in with all the permissioning that we haven't really talked about, but row level, column level, field level access. We can pipe that through all the way and we can, deliver these very custom experiences very quickly to our users. So these are really just the same objects that we were looking at earlier in Omni in a presentational style that makes it very easy for, anyone to sort of pick up these analyses and get value all the way down to the exploration experience. So if we wanted to, for example, grab a data set and say, show me my top performing products, you can literally just pick up the core app here and we're going to authenticate the user all the way through, bring sort of naturally everything that you get in the app and, have that be delivered out to the users. So the nice thing is that sort of the whole app comes for free everywhere. Again, like we've got a bunch of training stuff here to make the LLM smarter, but it all just sort of comes along with the core app. Any
Awesome.
lingering questions, Tam?
Yes, we do have a couple more. So this one's from Elliot. Elliot, thank you so much for joining us again. So Elliot wants to see, can you show us how you connect a table to another dashboard whereby clicking in the cell linked to a specific user's board? He said, I believe you had showed it, but he missed it.
Can you say that one more time?
Yeah, can you show us how you can connect a table to another dashboard whereby clicking in the cell you linked to a specific user's board? Think are we talking about like XLOOKUP?
Maybe. I'll try to answer some related questions, and I might not even answer your question, but if you follow up, I can explain. So the nice thing about these tabs is that you can actually work across them really easily. So there we just grabbed a bunch of user overtime data. And
Colin,
over
you are not
here,
sharing anymore.
okay, well, that would help.
And I think he might potentially be talking about just like linking in the dashboard.
Okay, like the deep linking pieces. Okay. Let me do this X lookup just because it's fun, and then I will show you the sort of deep linking pieces. Um, but the point is that we can actually, like the tabs of this workbook, we can actually work across very easily. So if I want to look at orders over time and users over time, if I would like to go grab data from another tab, I can do things like X lookup A1 into the users tab and match that with column A, and then align and grab column B. And I've got now users over time next to orders over time. And again, ratios, I can plot these things. So the key is that it's really easy to sort of bring these data sets together and do things like that. To the linking, there's a bunch of different ways that we can do this, which is kind of nice. So the first one is that we can actually do these things in the front end. So the simple example here is, let's go grab a set of brands. And these will come back from the data warehouse. In those presentational objects that we talked about, let me get this out of the way. Let's go to the chart and let's make the table. You'll see that we have a bunch of different ways that we can present brand. And one of those ways is that we can actually create a link. And the really sort of nice aspect, again, of these calculations is I can just do this sort of thing on the fly. So I can just say equals, google.com/ let's see how Google query looks. Let's search for brand. So it looks like this. So let's grab the front of this and let's go paste this in. And we will ampersand in this. And so now we have a set of URLs, but obviously we don't want to show the user that. It's not pretty. Let's grab
Colin,
account.
it
Yes.
has stopped sharing your screen again.
Oh, it says I'm screen sharing. Let's try again. How about now?
Yeah, we are good. Thank you,
Okay.
Zoom. This is live.
See, what you can see here is I made a calc where I have pasted in the URL and I've just ampersanded in the brand. But I don't really want to show the table this way. The really simple thing to do is we can actually hop into our chart table, and rather than the brand, we can actually create a link to the link. So now I've just created the link here. We can go hide this field. And now very simply, I have a presentational table that will link. So this is the sort of front end version of it. I can kind of do this anywhere. Really, really easy. The other kind of nice aspect here is if I go hop in behind the scenes, we have these structural concepts that sit underneath the app. And so we can make it so that anytime I see a brand, I can go link out. So if I go look at products, I might need to be in a new data set. So let's actually go back because I didn't have it in this connection. But let's just go to this dashboard. And I will show you if we go look at these brands. And let's see what this looks like. And I go look at underneath this. Let's go to the definition. What you'll see is that every time we render brand, we're going to dynamically offer up two links that we've essentially parameterized globally. And so this is, again, like a lot of what we've gone for in the app is really easy to do in the front end, ad hoc. You saw the sort of dynamic URL construction. You can also make them structural. So anytime anyone sees brand, and kind of, again, the better example here is deep links into Salesforce, deep links into your internal app. You can dynamically link to the field. You can even call other fields. So if you wanted to link to the ID for example, you can go parameterize to another field. So there's an enormous amount of flexibility on these things. And again, like we've really tried to balance this sort of fluidity between the front end to the back end. So even things like color, which I know sound incredibly trivial, we've got these same workflows. So I'll show you a quick example here. I've got state and user count, and we'll filter this to the top 20 states and chart them. And again, we're not coloring by anything, but if I drag state onto color, you can see that I've mapped 5 colors. And what that means is that anytime I am using states, I will get these sort of default colors. They're consistent. So even if I look at it, sliced up by quarter, let's pivot and grab our top states again. Now they're stacked, same colors, consistency. But the same sort of balance between move really quickly and create standards is available here. So if I want to go into states and color a few more, let's make the next set all purple. Of course, I can do that at the query level. That's nice, but it's not going to affect my other query. But again, we have paths to essentially centralize this logic and create consistency. So I want these all to look the same way on my dashboard. Great. I can actually make that logically consistent across the entire app of my dashboard. And then if I really want to, I can actually pick up these concepts and make them everyone's. So I'm going to promote this concept now to everyone's workbook, and it will now get encoded in that sort of centralized model that we looked at before. So again, pop down here, see users. You can see a bunch of these new states are purple now. So you've always got this really nice push-pull between going really fast in the workbook and then all of these centralized modeling concepts that sit behind the scenes. We're going long here, but we've done a deeper dive into the sort of DBT connectivity and making sure that we can actually push this stuff all the way back into the warehouse. And I would add, like, there's probably a whole other webinar where we could talk about sort of picking up the core concepts here and actually sitting them in the data warehouse itself.
Okay, I have a couple more questions I'll throw to you, and then I know we're a little bit over, so thank you everyone, and apologies if I missed anything. We've got a couple questions around AI. So one is, again, from the same marketer. We're going to connect with her after, but wants to know a little bit more just about, AI. You mentioned AI overlay, wants to know more about the AI capabilities already in Omni. And
Yep.
then we've got another follow-up to that from someone else who's talking a little bit about the existing capabilities. I just want to get your thoughts on expanding that in the Omni environment, like what we might be thinking about kind of beyond assistant approaches, if there's anything with automation coming in.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that we have seen is how amazing it is that the data model can sort of feed the core experience. So we've already got a bunch of natural language query, and let's actually clear out a tab. And I will show you it failing, and then I'll actually show you why the model is so powerful here. So the idea is that we've really tried to make it so that the data model can sort of make it simpler to create AI queries. So I can say, show me total sales in the US. And if you remember back earlier, the country category contains 2 values, USA and let me actually just go restart a fresh workbook here. But it's going to contain 2 values. It's going to contain USA and show me total sales in the US. But it's going to contain, USA and UK. And if I remember correctly, this will actually write the query incorrectly. So this will, it'll filter for country equals US, and it will not return results. What's very nice, and where you're going to see us do a lot of building, is actually being able to proactively provide more metadata into the data model. And so I'll show you a quick example here. We'll do this in sort of the most trivial way, but this is pretty instructive towards the type of things that we're building. We can say, example values are USA and UK. And I'm going to update this. And now we can actually go rewrite this query. And let's kill this. Let's even start a new tab just to make sure. But sell me total sales in the US. Just with that small change, we can actually probably provide enough context to actually nudge that query back to correct. And so you can see that now we're getting the query correct. And the really sort of beautiful underpinning here is all of the work that you're putting into all of the core BI investment that you have. So all the dashboarding that you've done, all the querying that you've done can actually feed these models and this metadata structure in a very direct way that makes it get better over time. And so the really powerful sort of motion here is that we can provide a lot of this context in a much more automated way. We're going down the path of doing a lot of investment there. And in doing so, the recall and the sort of quality can improve drastically. We will likely build completely different UIs for some of these experiences, but it is deeply integrated with all of the investment. So I don't think this dashboard has the population work that we were doing. Dang, but it can actually sort of pick up these new fields that we have. So I can just show you a really quick example. State, create a column for whether the state touches the ocean. I might have to tell it to make an if statement. Okay, so it does something. Again, I don't know if that's right. Let's promote it to the workbook. And then let's clear our query. Show me total sales by whether a state touches the ocean. Misspelled ocean. We'll see if it does. The general point here is like all the building blocks feed each other beautifully. And I think that is really the core power of the system, is that all of the investment that you are putting into every single one of these use cases can drive towards centralizing governance, empowering everyone to make business logic, and ultimately like making the app smarter for your user. So big area of ongoing investment, but the sort of get everyone to make business logic is the real key to making this successful.
Okay, thank you so much, Colin. I believe we've gotten every question. Everyone feel free to reach out. Apologies if we missed anything. We're happy to follow up directly. Thank you so much to Colin. Thank you to everyone who joined us live. Thank you to our product and engineering team for giving us so much good stuff to share. As a reminder, you can catch the recording right here on our LinkedIn if you want to come back later. And if you missed anything, thanks again, and we hope to see you all soon. Bye.